Daf Yomi, Tractate, Bava, page 113b. At the top of the page, but it might be a good idea to start from the bottom of 113a because it is in the middle of an idea. Okay, the Gemara challenges this assertion, but is robbery from a Gentile permitted? Okay, disclaimer, this is just me reading the Talmud. This doesn't reflect my own opinion, or my own thoughts, or my own conduct. This is strictly me reading the Talmud. Now that the disclaimer is said, the Gemara challenges this assertion, but is robbery from a Gentile permitted? Isn't it taught in a Braita? Rabbi Shimon said that Rabbi Akiva taught this matter when he came from Zephyrin. From where is it derived that it is prohibited to rob a Gentile? Okay, so now they're saying that is prohibited, but before they were saying that in certain cases it's permitted to. But in any case, it's from the facts. So how do we know that you're not allowed to rob a Gentile? It is from the fact that the verse states with regard to a Jew who has been sold as a slave to a Gentile. After he is sold, he may be redeemed. In Leviticus 25:48, and now we're on 113b, top of 113b with the words Shaloyim Shecheno V'Yetze, indicating that one should not take a Hebrew slave by force and thereby allow him to leave the Gentile's jurisdiction. So you have to redeem him from the Gentile. It's a very deep idea. You have to redeem the Jews from the Gentiles if they've been sold into spiritual slavery, that they actually have. That's another idea. But anyway, rather the Jew must be freed by legal means. One might have thought that it is permitted to deceive him in order to free the Jew. Therefore, the verse states, and he shall reckon with him that he bought him. Leviticus 25:50. In order to teach that one must be precise in the financial dealings with the purchaser of a Hebrew slave, and one must pay him the appropriate sum without employing any form of deception. This indicates that it is prohibited to steal from a Gentile. The Gemara answers that Rav Yosef said, "It is not difficult, as this ruling that permits the court to deceive a Gentile is issued with regard to a regular Gentile, whereas that verse, which teaches that it is prohibited to deceive a Gentile, is stated with regard to a Gentile who resides in Eretz Yisrael, who observes the 7 Noachai mitzvot, also known as Ger Toshav." Abaye said to Rav Yosef, "How is it possible to differentiate between a Gentile and a Ger Toshav? Aren't both of them written next to each other, indicating that the same halakha pertains to both, as it is taught in a Braita? One who violates the prohibitions of the sabbatical year will be punished by having to resort to selling himself as a slave. And he will sell himself not to you, but to a stranger, as it is stated, and sell himself unto the stranger." Leviticus 25:47. And not to a stranger who is a convert, but to a ger toshav, as it is stated, and sell himself to the stranger who is a settler with you. Ger toshav. Leviticus 25:47. Mishpachat ger ze goy, keshu omer ol eker ze animkar levodah zara. The verse continues and states, or to the offshoot of a stranger's family. When it says a stranger's family, this is referring to the Gentile family of a ger toshav, who are idolaters. When it says, or to the offshoot, this is referring to a Jew who is sold to idol worship. In other words, to work in a temple dedicated to idolatry, since it is subsequently started, he shall reckon with him that bought him. Leviticus 25:50. It is apparent that this reckoning applies equally to each of the above, including the Gentile. This contradicts Rav Yosef's answer. Rather, Rava said, it is not difficult because here, in the case of the slave, the halakha is stated with regard to an actual act of robbery committed against the Gentile. But there, in the case of the Braita, where it would be permitted to employ deception, if not for the desecration of God's name, the halakha is stated with regard to abrogating his loan. Abrogating a loan owed to a Gentile is permitted because it does not entail actually taking money. Abaye said to Rava, the release of a Hebrew slave from his Gentile master is akin to the abrogation of his loan. The purchase price paid by the master is considered as a loan that a slave pays back over the years of his servitude until he goes free at the Jubilee. Consequently, deceptively bringing about his early release is akin to abrogating a loan. Yet Rabbi Akiva derives from the verse that it is prohibited to do so. The Gemara answers that Rava conforms to his standard line of reasoning. As Rava says, the body of a Hebrew slave is owned by his master, and retaking him from the Gentile by deceptive means would therefore constitute actual robbery. The Gemara cites another statement related to stealing from a Gentile. Rav Bivi Bar Gidel says that Rabbi Shimon Chasida says it is prohibited to rob a Gentile, but it is permitted to retain his lost item. In other words, one is not required to return it to him. Okay. The Gemara examines the basis for each of these rulings. It is prohibited to rob a Gentile, as Rav Huna says. From where is it derived that it is prohibited to rob a Gentile? It is derived from a verse as it is stated, and you shall consume all the peoples that the Lord your God shall deliver unto you, Deuteronomy 7:16, indicating that it is permitted to consume the other nation's property only when they are delivered into your hand. That means in times of war, but not when they are not delivered into your hand. Okay. It is permitted to retain his lost item, as Rav Chama Bar Guria says. That Rav says, from where is it derived that it is permitted to retain the lost item of a Gentile? It is derived from a verse, as it is stated with regard to the midst of returning a lost item, with everything lost thing of your brothers, Deuteronomy 22:3, indicating that it is only your brother that you return a lost item, but you do not return a lost item to a Gentile. The Gemara questions this derivation, but say that this applies only where the item has not yet come into the Jew's hand, as he is obligated to pursue in an effort to find the lost item and return it. But in a case where the item had already come into his hands, say that he must return to the Gentile. The Gemara answers that Ravina said, it is understood from the verse itself, as it states, and so shall you do with every lost thing of your brothers. I mean, what if you considered a Gentile your brother? I mean, who's determining that a Jew, only a Jew is the brother? Okay, again, their words, not mine. Which he has lost, and you have found. Deuteronomy 22:3, which indicates that the verse refers even to an item that has already come into one's hand. It is taught in Braita that Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair says, in a case where there is a concern that retention of an article lost by a Gentile will result in the desecration of God's name, it is prohibited even to retain a Gentile's lost item. The Gemara adds, Shmuel says that it is permitted to financially benefit from a business error of a Gentile. In other words, Shmuel says that it is permitted to financially benefit from a business error of a Gentile. Not my words. It need not be returned. The Gemara notes that this is like that incident where Shmuel purchased a golden bowl from a Gentile in exchange for the price of an iron bowl, which was 4 dinars, and Shmuel included 1 additional dinar in the payment so the Gentile would not realize his mistake. The Gemara relates another incident. Rav Kahana purchased 120 barrels from a Gentile for the price of 100 barrels, and he included 1 additional dinar in the payment. Rav Kahana said to him, take note. Now you could see that this Talmudic realm is not in sync with the New Testament idea, because in the New Testament idea it says there is no Jew or Greek, there is no male nor female in the kingdom, so that all these issues wouldn't this separation between Jew and Gentile has been according to the New Testament. You could see that in this paradigm that the reality is still very much real. I mean, it's existent. Rav Kahana said to him, take note that I'm relying upon you to check that the interaction has been carried out properly. The Gemara records the 3rd episode. Ravina and a Gentile purchased a palm tree together in order to chop it up and split the wood between them. Ravina said to his attendant, hurry and precede the Gentile so that you can bring my share of the wood from the trunk of the tree, which is thicker than the upper part of the tree, as a Gentile knows only the number of logs that is due to receive and will not realize that you are taking thicker pieces. I would think it'd be nice to kind of be fair and kind of even divide up evenly, Why are you deceiving the goy? Why you gotta be doing that? Okay. The Gemara relates a final anecdote. When Rav Ashi was traveling on the road and he saw a branch of grapevine in an orchard, and there were clusters of grapes hanging on it, he said to his attendant, go see to whom these clusters belong. If they are owned by a Gentile, bring some to me, but if they are owned by a Jew, do not bring me any. A certain Gentile who was sitting in the orchard overheard Rav Ashi's instruction. The Gentile said to him, is it permitted to steal the property of a Gentile? Rav Ashi said to him, a Gentile takes money for his grapes, and I intended to pay for them. But a Jew does not take money for his grapes, and I did not want to take them without paying for them. And I did not want to take them without paying for them. I don't know if he switched it last moment or what. I don't know. The Gemara relates the matter of civil law itself. Shmuel says the law of the kingdom is a law. And the halachic principle is that Jews must obey the laws of the state in which they reside. Rava said, no, that this principle is true from the fact that the municipal authorities cut down palm trees without the consent of their owners and construct bridges from them, and yet we cross over them. Evidently, the wood is not considered stolen property, which one is prohibited from using because the law of the kingdom is the law. Abaya said to Ravi, perhaps the reason the bridges may be used is because their owners despaired of retrieving them, and not because the law of the kingdom is the law. Ravi said to Abaya, if not for the fact that the law of the kingdom is the law, how would the despair of the owners of the trees allow us to use the bridges. The fact that the owners have despaired of retrieving their wood does not affect a transfer of property, and it therefore still belongs to them. The Gemara questions Rava's understanding. But the municipal authorities do not act as the king said. The king said, "Go and cut down a bit of wood from the valleys, from all the valleys in the area, so that each individual loses only a small amount of wood." They, however, disobey the king and go out and cut down all the wood needed for the bridge from one valley. Therefore, even if the law of the kingdom is the law, this cannot be the reason that the halakha permits Jews to cross over such bridges, as the authorities are not enforcing the law of the kingdom, but rather their own unlawful inclinations. The Gemara answers, an agent of a king is like the king himself, and he is not expected to trouble himself to collect wood proportionally from each valley. They, the owners of the land where the wood is cut, cause themselves a loss, as they should collect compensation from all the other residents of the valleys and take money from them for this purpose. Since the landowners whose wood was used have permission to collect compensation from all the residents in the area, the authorities are acting within their rights by confiscating wood from a single location. Similarly, Rava says when the king's agents come to collect the king's share of the grain from a field owned by several partners, the one who is found in the granary must pay the king's share for the entire property, as the agents are not expected to locate and exact payment from each individual proprietor separately. The partner who paid may later claim reimbursement from the other owners for covering their share of the tax, and this statement applies only to partners who share ownership of the field. But a sharecropper collects his portion from the crop but does not own a share of the land. Consequently, the tax may not be collected from his produce, and doing so would constitute robbery. And Rava also says property that belongs to a town dweller may be taken as security for the tax owed by another town dweller. And this statement applies only to the property tax and head tax of that year, but with regard to taxes from the previous year, since the king has already been appeased, the ability to take property belonging to someone else has passed. The tax collector has already paid the entire amount he must pay the king for the previous year, and everything else he collects is for his own profit. Although he has the right to collect this extra amount, he may not take property for one person as security for the taxes of someone else. And Rava says, with regard to those Gentiles who construct pens for their animals inside the city limits and charge a fee to bring their animals through the fields around the city to fertilize the fields, it is prohibited to purchase animals from them. What is the reason? It is because the livestock of the Jewish residents of the town become intermingled with their livestock, and it is possible that the animal one would buy is actually stolen property. Rava adds, if the pens were outside the city limits, it is permitted to purchase livestock from them, as it is unlikely that a Jew's livestock became intermingled with the seller's livestock. Ravina said, if the owners of the livestock were pursuing the animals, and even if the pens were outside the city limits, it is prohibited to purchase livestock from the owners of the pens. Apropos the discussion of legal dealings between Jews and Gentiles, the Gemara relates, Rava declared, and some say it was Rav Huna who declared, all who ascend upward to Eretz Yisrael and all who descend downward to Babylonia agree that in the case of a Jew who knows of evidence concerning the legal claim of a Gentile, and the Gentile did not demand from him that he testify, and the Jew nevertheless went and testified for him in a Gentile court against his fellow Jew, we excommunicate him. What is the reason that we excommunicate him? It is because they, the Gentile courts, expropriate money, and to be continued.